thank you to Joe for coming. I was walking my dog on Miramontes Beach today, right? So what do I see on there that I never used to really look at much was...
You found sea glass.
Well,
and I wasn't there.
What I just said, I know I'm going to find out about this tonight. So Joe's been really interested in this and done a lot of writing that's been in the local papers. There's some of her really wonderful jewelry back there for sale. And I want to cut it off now and introduce Joe, and she'll give a talk, and we'll have some time for questions at the end of the presentation.
Thank you so much. Gosh, look at I think because we're on the coast, we all collect sea glass, right? We all do, and I'm an artist, and I use it in my paintings, and I use it in my jewelry. So many people come to me and say, I have a jar of it at home. Even artists that I know, they don't know the history. They may be the best sea glass silversmiths, but they don't tend to know the history. Why am I talking? What are my credentials here? Well, number one, I'm honored to be the bottle curator at the History Association. That means if anybody has a whole bottle they want to donate, then usually I get the honor to look at that and say, wow, that's really old, that's really special. Also, because I'm a sea glass artist, I do, as a vendor and a speaker, attend all the major sea glass festivals in California. That would be like the Santa Cruz Sea Glass Festival that occurred last month, and the Santa Barbara Sea Glass Festival. I've also spoken this year at the San Francisco Gem and Mineral Society on sea glass, because finding a piece of glass is like finding a gem. It really is. Well, we're in sea glass season right now. I've declared the season open because I found my first piece of black glass last week. Very exciting. So, why is it black? A lot of people call black glass pirate glass. We didn't really have pirates here, so I think that's a bit of a misnomer. If you're in England, if you're in the East Coast, pirate glass. I call it saloon glass. Probably that's where it came from. Why is it black? It was actually, if you shine a light through it, you know that it could be dark brown or dark green. It was made dark so the contents inside of it didn't spoil, and often burnt bone ash was put into the glass mixture to make it black. Okay, so when you want to identify a piece of sea glass, thickness, color, shape, if there's any markings on it, because sometimes you can find a nicely worn piece of glass and you'll find maker's marks on it. And then that will help key you into identification. And then also the location where it was found. Along the coast here, we had a fort in World War II at Miramar. So now there's condos where that fort was. Before the condos, and as part of the fort, there was also a hotel, and before the hotel, there was a warehouse and a pier. So there's locations that have history that goes back to the 1860s, and you'll find artifacts that date to those early dates, really early dates in our history. So thickness. Early glass bottles were first free-blown, and free-blown glass really 16th, 17th century. Before that, most of the contents in bottles they were ceramic bottles, because the glass making, it was just very expensive technology. And then around the 16th, 17th century, they began doing free-blown bottles. And if you follow baby mud marks on the tins, they'll find onion bottles and really, really old bottles. But here in America, most of our glass was blown into a mold at that early stage. It has been said that glassmaking was one of the early technologies, early industries and technologies in our country. Around 1830s, molds were invented. So glass blowers would be blowing the molten glass into molds. It enabled more consistent shapes for their bottles and made the production a little bit faster. But here in Half Moon Bay, sometimes you'll still find free-blown bottles. This piece was found on the beach, I think 2 years ago. And the sad thing about it, it's a dark piece of glass, so it's dark. So you can tell this was a free-blown bottle. Look at that really wonky. This is the content of the wine bottle, it's called a wine bottle. And it's wonky, it sits crooked because this was free-blown. Very sorrowfully, it was recently broken when I found it. Look at those shiny bits there. You can tell it had been worn. What I think, this was probably buried in the pillarcitos in the side. There was a storm, it got washed out, and it got into the ocean, and then it broke, and it washed back up, and I found it. But when I found this, I went, holy moly, it was a free-blown glass bottle. This dates it a lot further back in time. So how did this bottle get here? Maybe it was made in San Francisco. It could have been in the early days. It could have also come on one of the ships that sailed and stopped here. So San Francisco, there were glass-making factories, Pacific Glass Works. That was all started right after the gold rush. Prior to that, to get a glass bottle, sometimes they were imported. Sometimes they were imported from the East Coast, and also instances of them being imported over from Hawaii via ship. So this glass manufacturing was begun in San Francisco. The company changed its names numerous times over the years, but Pacific Glass Works is what is a common name that you'll see. And I have a piece here. And you can come up afterwards. This has engraved with the Pacific Glass Works, PG, Pacific Glass Works, PGW. And fun or not very fun fact, this glassworks was the site of the worst sports disaster in history. Sports disaster. It was the early 1900s, and Stanford was playing a game, and where the stadium was located within eyeshot of the glassworks. Now, the glassworks where that was is a hospital in San Francisco, and the roof collapsed, and most of the people on the roof were young, either teenagers or they were young men, and they sadly died. Over 30 people died, so it was the site of the worst sporting disaster. Interesting fact to know, but so we'll find bottles and pieces that were definitely made at that location, that glassworks in San Francisco. But your older glass that you're going to find generally tends to be thicker. I'll show a piece here. Pretty thick. This would have been an early machine-made piece. I know that because of the white color, but it's still really thick bottle base. So molds. There were several different types of molds that were used in the 19th century. Turn molds, 3-part molds, cup molds, and where you get cup molds were the very, very thick bases. So they were made almost like a cup and the glass cooled at the bottom. So sometimes you'll find a perfectly round, really, really thick piece on the beach. Some of them I found actually they look like jellyfish, and you kind of pick them with your boot. And when they don't, sometimes they are jellyfish, but they could be the bottom of a really old cup mold base. This one here is in my collection, this black glass bottle. I did not bring it, but it was a 3-part mold, and you can tell where the seams meet. And that means it's also a black bottle. It's a lot older bottle, and that one I found at an estate sale of someone who was here and lived here for decades. I mean, her children were quite elderly and just getting rid of her possessions, but she had these bottles, and I knew they were the provenance was all local. So it was really interesting for me. But there was a variety of these molds that were used in the 19th century. Yeah. Nope. Okay. I'm going to keep talking. Owens, Michael, the man who invented machine-made glass was named Michael Owens. He was a glass blower, and he knew it was just really dirty business. A lot of the glass companies use young children, boys, called gaffers, and what they would do is this skilled technician, the glass blower, would blow these glass into the molds, and oftentimes they were set on the ground, and the kids, their job was to grab these hot things and move them out of the way and then get the bottle out of it. And imagine no air conditioning, it's a really hot day, and how horrible those working conditions. The glass blowers were also susceptible to eye issues with the fumes and of course lung problems. So he invented the automatic glass bottle making machine, automatic bottle making machine. He patented around 1905. And around that time period, between 1905 to 1920, machine glass became integrated. Some companies use both blown bottles and machine-made bottles simultaneously. But by about 1915, 1920, it's all machine-made. Okay, where are we?
Keep talking.
Okay. And Glennon, here we go. We've got to get the young person up here. All right, let's see if we can make this happen. Come on. All right. Look, get the kid up here. So, the number one color that we find, and I'm deviating a little bit, I'm just free going right now, is white. Everybody knows that number one color is white. I log all my finds too. I'm a really geeky person. I started logging my finds in January of 2020, even though I've been beachcombing for longer than that, because they were getting a little out of hand and wanted to keep them organized. So I know by time, by date, by color, by month, by place, location, and also percentage breakdown by color. So white constitutes 26.5%, roughly, of all the colors that we find. And it would be 20th century and newer. So to get a piece to be called a good piece of sea glass, it needs to be well tumbled. And that takes decades. Our waves are pretty severe. So they can tumble something probably faster than, river glass. If you ever found a piece of glass in a river and it's sort of smooth and sort of shaped, or lake glass. It's different here. It's very tumbled. All right, there we go. Glass that contains bubbles. If you found a piece of sea glass and you see little bubbles in it, that's from the glass blower. So you've got an older piece of glass if you find bubbles in your glass. It's an indication. Also, if you can find a piece that is, this is a top found on the beach here, top of the bottle. It's got bubbles, and you also kind of see stretch marks. So you've got the glass blower actually stretching it out, and you can find that on your sea glass, and it's not machine made, it's older than being machine made, so probably it's 19th century. Sorry? Yeah, go for it. Okay, color. White sea glass, clear. They started out being clear, and then this is 20th century, machine made. Why was glass suddenly, the advent of machines, why was glass suddenly clear? Around the same time, in 1906, there was an act called the Pure Food and Drug Act that the government passed. Prior to that, there was no regulation in foods or medicine. So you would have medicines, and the History Association has one in their collection called Piso's Cure for Consumption. You know what consumption is? It's tuberculosis. You don't cure it with opium and alcohol, but what you do get is people that are addicted. They become addicted to your medicine. And there were deaths in this country, and people began to complain. The food industry kind of fought it for a little bit, but 1906 this was passed. So if you're a food manufacturer, you really want to show people and have them buy your food, so you put your stuff in clear glass. So hence why clear glass became the dominant color of glass for jars and bottles that were food or consumables, I would say. All right, there's just an interesting Fort Bragg. If anybody's been to Fort Bragg, cool location, yeah. You're not supposed to take their glass, but I can tell you can hike slightly to the north, or maybe slightly to the south, and still find a lot of sea glass that's not the state beach. The person in the museum there says 40% of their glass is white or clear. It's clear. And ours is a lesser percentage, so we have a more wide variety of trash out there. Natural or bottle green. So something like this, there wasn't an additive made or put into the glass to make it this color. This is from the minerals that was in the sand that the bottle was made out of. And because it's green, copper was probably one of those minerals. Also, when you find a piece that's this beautiful, like aqua blue color, and this is avid, American Bottle Company. This was, I found mudlarking in the San Francisco Bay. So it was just glowing really blue in the sun. But nothing was added to the glass to make it that color. It's the minerals that this glass was made. And this is an old blown piece. It's a little bit older, 19th century. So, all right. All right, let's get the guy. We need to hire you. Okay. All right, lavender, purple. Has anybody found lavender glass? Yeah? Oh, this is an older piece of glass. It didn't start out its life being this color. It started out being clear. But people, the manufacturers wanted their bottles to be clear and not green or blue. So they added manganese to the glass mixture as a clarifying agent. And over time, manganese does something that's called solarization. The sunlight turns it purple because it's manganese. So the sunlight turns it purple. In North Beach in San Francisco, on the sidewalks, some of the sidewalks have these big, thick, round pieces in them meant to let light go through. It was very, very old, so it's been there for 100 plus, 120 years, and they've turned dark, dark purple. So if you're ever walking down like Columbus in North Beach, like you'll see them. I bet you got pictures of it, like, well, that's glass and it's turned dark purple. So I'm going to do a little spoiler here. What do you think is the rarest color of sea glass on our beaches?
Red.
Orange.
Yellow. Blue.
Green.
Dark purple? By my statistics, it's dark, dark purple. And this was a piece of like, it's a window glass, but it's got a texture to it. So it's probably a privacy window glass. And so the manganese thing, let me go to manganese. 1870s to about 1915. And why do I say 1915? We were at war in 1915. Manganese was imported from Germany, and we were not trading with Germany at the time. Also, it was a component in steel manufacturing. So no longer was manganese used in glass manufacturing. So if you find a piece of lavender, or lucky enough to find a piece of dark purple, you've got a piece that's from a bottle that was older than 1915. So that's pretty special. It's pretty special. After 1915, what did they use as a clarifying agent? They used selenium. And so you'll find this sort of straw-colored white sea glass. If anybody's got some of that, it looks like straw. That is like 1915 to maybe 1940s, 50s, where they use selenium in the glass. You can date your piece that using the color. There's straw-colored glass. All right, what did you say? Up, down, what? No. Yes. So aqua. Medicine bottles, bitter bottles. As I said, these beautiful blue. This would have been, I don't know what of it. Probably like a liquor maybe was inside of these bottles. Oftentimes mason jars were very, very light blue, and you can find pieces that are so pale blue, they look like they're white, then you put them next to your white sea glass and they're not. They're just pale, pale blue. Up into some really vibrant blue. Some of those may come from insulators. We'll talk about insulators. I'm obsessed with them, so I won't say that. Greens. A joke is that there's 50 shades of green when it comes to sea glass. You get your lime greens, which I love. Lime greens are so beautiful. 20s through 60s, maybe you pick Coke bottles with that beautiful lime green. you get emerald green. And sometimes you get these bigger, beautiful pieces. Why? This is called Duraglass. So this bottle here, I found in a cliff, what I would call pretty level. So it was probably their outhouse. And this is a particular manufacturer that dates their bottles, or they dated their bottles. And there's date codes, and they're very, very useful date codes. I know the manufacturer, I know the plant location, where it was made, and I know the date. And this one is 1943, and the location that I found this bottle had Fort Miramar located only in 1943, and it's by Miramar. There was a hotel there, the military commandeered it, they built wooden structures for soldiers, and curiously enough, most of these, and it says Duraglass, most of these bottles that I find are plants 20 and 23, 20 being Oakland, 23 being LA, so makes sense, you don't have to push the, travel the bottles very far to get them full. This one is, I think, Pennsylvania. So not only is it 1943, it's like a Pennsylvania, so they were bringing their wine in for their officers, and he had his wine, and then he threw it down the chute. So, very cool. Other colors of green, you can get teal green, you could get Kelly green, Kelly green's the most common green color. Also olive green, make wine bottles, they still make wine bottles in these colors. Yeah, I did it. Coke bottles. Okay, so Coke bottles come in this beautiful shade, but Coke bottles aren't old. I mean, they're old, but they're not 19th century old. Coca-Cola was very, very smart. They knew they had a good product, so they ran a contest to design their bottle and also to design their color. So the winner of this contest, I think it's the company that won, designed the shape of the Coke bottle and also the color, and that was patented. And if you want to come up later, this is a perfectly frosted on the front, not frosted on the back. Was this bottle more intact before I found it, before it got broken up? I don't know. But the Coke bottles, they were from maybe 1920s again, 1960s. I like to think a lot of this tremendous date for what I find is the 60s, because then we transition things into plastic. Still there's bottles, and people leave glass bottles out on the beach, and I know glass still occasionally gets in there. We are beachgoers, we find somebody had a party and left all their bottles out there. And being a good citizen, we pick them up, but anyway, so that's kind of Coke bottles. Amber honey. I really like these brown colors. I mean, brown's a little polarizing. They're common. Like, oh, it's another piece of brown sea glass, and I'm not going to pick it up. But the 1940s Coke beer bottles, they are beautiful. So old amber could be 19th century. They could be 19th century. This is a bottle from 1947. I found this. I'm a bottle digger too, so I found this in Calistoga, across from the cemetery in Calistoga. There's a road and just a ditch, and we got out, we parked the cars, went to check out the cemetery, like, oh, there's some bottles in the other bottle in the ditch. And yeah, Armstrong glass, 1947, so it's just a beautiful color. It's not quite like very modern beer bottles, it's richer and deeper. So I really like brown. And then you'll find them, this is like the lip of a block top, really old, 19th century, but it's that big, thick lip, and another honey amber color. Up, down. All right, root beer brown, we'll find those commonly. It's still getting in. Sometimes you find a piece of sea glass that maybe it's completely worn, and it's got that Budweiser label. You know what that looks like. You will find those, and they can be really well worn. Reds. Okay, why I say red is not our #1 color. When the jetty was built, right now we know that they're doing the dredging project. The jetty was built by 59, 60. When that was built, it changed the course of the currents. So what happened, instead of the currents kind of coming into Princeton, they hit what's now Surfers Beach. And by the 1970s, 70s, it was eroding at the rate of 12 feet a year, up to 12 feet a year, and there's photos online. You can see our original town road, before Highway 1 was built, ran along that cliff, and you could see somebody took these beautiful black and white photos, but it's showing like it's so eroded, and you can see vestiges of the road there. And I find sometimes pieces of the surrounding things that were in the middle of this road, I'll find them kind of washed out on the beach, and I know that's where that came from. But when that started doing its really bad erosion thing, one of the ways they tried to stop it was by piling cars. They would put old cars, and we've seen pieces of those cars eroding out within the last 10 years. So I think that's why we find red more commonly than a lot of other people, because we had cars, and orange too, orange tail light pieces, that there were cars there and they didn't take their tail lights out, and that glass got into the ocean, and that's why we find it. So there was also, there was a beer bottle Anglo Hocking produced that was a deep cranberry red for 2 non-consecutive years in the 1950s, and yes, you can find that. It looks black. You hold it up to the light and it's deep cranberry red. Red is so special. It's think of people, it's such a high value piece of sea glass. When red was originally produced, it actually had gold in the glass mixture, so it really was a valuable color. Sometimes you'll find them that are red and orange, that's amberina, and those come from Depression era glass pieces. Cobalt, okay, so cobalt is is this anybody's favorite color to find, cobalt blue? Yeah. So this is usually the #1 color. If I take a poll at a sea glass festival, if I have cobalt blue earrings, they sell first. So cobalt oxide added to the glass. It can be very old. The main manufacturer for the pieces that we find here was Maryland Glass Corporation. They were located in Baltimore, Maryland. They started out making something called bromo seltzer. I don't know if anybody's heard of bromo seltzer. The very old bottles, they were made by another company for the manufacturers of that medicine. That was actually a decent medicine. In the 1920s, they advertised it for hangover cure, bromo seltzer. But the old bottles were that pale white cornflower blue. So if you find cornflower blue, they tend to be smaller pieces and they're over glass. The cobalt blue, Maryland Glass was known for this. They advertised it. They made Vaseline jars, Noxema. Did you remember Noxema? Vaseline, let's see, what else? I remember my mom having Noxema and those blue jars, and darn it, I wish I hadn't kept those blue jars. I actually have a Vicks Vapor jar that was in my, I saw it in the back of medicine cabinet, and I'm going to taste this because I think it's from the 60s. and we found the whole jar. So this blue, gorgeous color. This is Maryland Glass. This is like Phillips Milk of Magnesia, another thing they made. This glass bottle probably was manufactured in the 1950s, and this was found at an old home site, and I look at old maps too, so old home site, and it was eroding out from the beach cliff. So this was during the storm I found this. It's got these ridges, so sometimes if people think, like, if there's ridges, it means it's a poison bottle, but I've got sea glass pieces up here that the ridges, you can still see the ridges, and it would have come from the milk of magnesia and not a poison. Fun fact here. So I wrote my first article on glass, and it was December of 2020, I think. It was up on the History Association's website. Somebody here in town saw that and knew a man named Jim. Jim lives back east. Jim's father was the head glass blower for Maryland Glass Corporation for 40 years. And he emailed me, and we set a time on a Sunday, and we chatted on the phone for maybe it was a couple hours. It was really wonderful to talk to him. He sent me this gift. So this is a top hat. It's an ashtray. ashtray, like everybody needed an ashtray. It was a corporate gift to the employees that worked at Beverly Glass Corporation. So it's maybe 50s, maybe 60s, but it's a very treasured piece in my collection. Milk glass. Okay, so milk glass in the 1800s, but really what it came to its fore in the 1920s and up to the 60s. Ponds and all these kind of cold creams that may have been in little jars. This one was found coming out at Princeton. And we have different shapes, but this is milk glass. So if you're the savvy beachcomber and you're walking around and the person in front of you is grabbing all the glass, I'm probably going to miss the milk glass. I'm just going to tell you, because it looks like shells. When you see it, it looks like shell. I mean, this is a piece of, but it just looks like a little shell sitting there, and it's fun. That fun glass. Also, it was the top of mason jars. Also, old mason jars would have had these glass, round glass, what do you call it? They topped it off to try to keep the food fresh. And these were made in milk glass, and the older ones actually are opalescent. This one is not. I think I do have one in my collection. But you can find, if you find them intact whole, normally they're just in pieces, but you know exactly what that is. And my favorite milk glass find. This is a light bulb. So this was me picking up trash after a storm. So probably what had happened, this was buried somewhere. It got kicked out by the ocean, thrown back up, and I saw this and thought it was just styrofoam. It's a lion. It would have originally been painted, and you can go online and find them. There's little vestiges of his pants, his blue pants right there. They were made in the 1920s in Germany. So this probably, it stopped working and someone threw it in a pit because we didn't have regular, why is all this glass out there? We didn't have regular trash pickup. There were houses located along the ocean. They would have had individual garbage pits. Sometimes you find these, I'm going to grab some water. Sometimes you find them, and you can find super cool stuff in the garbage pits. I have a perfume bottle from the 1920s that you open it up and you can still smell the perfume. And it was called Paris by Cody. It was from the 1920s. In one of those, we found a 6-pack of this soda, Kiss soda. I had never heard of this before. But this bottle is from the 50s, and it's super heavy. Sometimes you'll find sea glass with these striations or patterns. Oftentimes, these are from soda bottles. If I pull it up like that, you can see it. Because everybody wanted to be Coke, and Coke had their cool bottle, and everybody wanted to have a cool bottle. So oftentimes these sodas would come out with these interesting bottles. And there's so much glass, they're so thick and heavy. Black glass. Oh, milk glass. Let's go to jadeite. Sometimes you find the green jadeite, which is highly collectible in plates and dishes. Sometimes you find it azurite, which is that pale blue, and you'll find a piece where maybe the dish broke, they got rid of it, it ended up in the ocean, and you'll find little sea glass pieces. They're not very common, but they're fun to find. Black glass. I think I gave you my spiel about the black glass. I think pirate glass, okay, it's pirate glass, but saloon glass, and again, that's my 3-part mold bottle. It's just was made to keep the contents from spoiling, and I've got some big, nice pieces of black glass here. It's black, but it's really green, and that one you can see the green a little bit more, and that's what I found a nice piece last week that was just this end bit, and it looked like a stone, so you have to be really eyes on. If it's kind of a sparkly stone, it could be glass. Sometimes it's just a sparkly stone, and you hold it up and, no, it's not. But sometimes you hold it up and it's green or it's brown. It's like, yeah, happy dance. And I do the happy dance, actually. It's probably embarrassing. All right, uranium glass. We know uranium glass, it's highly collectible. People have these pieces in their collection. That's a juicer. I found it at an estate sale for a bargain price. It's like $5 for that juicer. Like, I know that's uranium glass. They didn't know, but I know. So it's actually uranium is in that mixture. And I was setting up in Sanchez Center last night, and I heard two of the artists talking about uranium glass, so of course I had to run over there, and one of them says, we have somebody we know who's a scientist, and she's got a Geiger counter. Oh, yeah. I've gotten like shot glasses with uranium glass, and do you really want to take a shot? Are you risking your health? I don't know. I don't think it's just trace amounts. Why did they put uranium in glass? We all know uranium girls, the thing about they had to paint the watches during World War I, because it enabled the pilots to see everything better at night. And that's the function of it too. It's had its heyday in the 1880s. It was made up until a little bit after World War II, with a stoppage, of course, during World War II, because uranium would have been needed again for a war effort. It's so fun to find. Sometimes you know right away it's a piece of uranium glass on the beach, and sometimes you don't know. So it's good to have these little flashlights. It doesn't have to be expensive. This one was less than $10. And this was found, this was found dump digging. I couldn't say where, but I think this was a champagne flute. And it's really cool. But you can hit your glass and after you find, like you come in, I've got all this glass, hit one of these flashlights and hit one of your jars of glass, and you may be surprised that you might have some uranium glass in there, and you'll see it glows that bright, bright color.
Is that a special light?
Yeah, it's a UV light, yeah. There's expensive ones you can get. We have a UV beast, a much more expensive broad spectrum. This one is just a cheapie. I think it was less than $10. Teal. Some bottles in the 19th century were teal, but a lot of them, I think what we find are insulators, because there were, right along the coast, there's old pictures where there were telephone lines that were put up, and these were put up pretty early on in our history. Like there were telephone lines already from San Francisco to San Jose in the 1880s. It's pretty early on. We were not that early because we're a little bit more remote, but we were fairly early on, and they would have had insulators. Okay, maybe this is time for my insulator story. Yeah. So I got this one last night. PG&E folks, they throw them away. So there was a blue insulator, aqua blue, that I stared at for 20 years across the street from me. They were working on the power lines a few months ago. It's a sad tale. I woke up the next morning, it's gone. So I called PG&E and I told my, you know who I am, Bobby, trying to say, like, where's the gosh darn insulator you stole from under my nose? A lady called me back right away because she collects them. She works for PG&E, and she says, no, ask them because we just throw them away. Last night, I came home from the Sanchez Center around 9:30. PG&E was out in front of my house. They were shining a light up into a pole that has insulators still on it, because then we still have some. I went over and talked to the guy, and he goes, oh, I got it, one in my truck. Would you like it? Yes, please. So this was taken from somewhere locally here. He couldn't remember where, but he goes, yeah, it was from around here. And he threw it in his truck, and he said, oh, I'm just going to throw it away. McLaughlin Glass, William McLaughlin was the glass maker. It's made in Vernon, California, and his company was from 1920 to 1935. So it's an oldie. So ask them. If you see them working, you can assault them and say, yeah.
Joseph.
Yeah, I said, orange, it can be decorative, and sometimes the multis, you can occasionally find like Murano glass pieces with orange, they were decorative pieces, and I've also got some that were definitely like car tail lights. Gray. So a lot of the gray glass, unintentional sand, the glass was made from iron or copper, but also TVs. 1950s, 1960s TVs somehow ended up in our ocean, and you can find pieces that are actually kind of curved, and they're gray, and that's where they came from. Shape. We talked about Coke bottles already. We talked about the 1950s, kind of 40s, 50s, 60s soda bottles, how they wanted to have the unique shapes there. The one in the middle, actually, I bought that one. That is from Hawaii. It was a soda in Hawaii. And then, of course, like there's a Dr. Pepper. That one's probably from the 60s. And, you know, we talked about a cobalt there. Letterings. I'm just going to hit the big elephant here. Owens, Illinois was the largest glass manufacturer in the U.S. in the 20th century. They are the largest glass manufacturer in the world. Go on their website, Owens. Their name is still from Michael Owens, the man who invented the glass blower that invented the machine. Do they have anything about him on their website? I couldn't find it. I think it's important, and I think they should. What you find with a lot of the glass manufacturers, and I won't bore you with all that, there was lots of them at one point in time, and they start, as companies do, merging, laying off, merging. And it goes on today. There's a glass manufacturer in Portland that I got a notification that they're shutting down and laying off 85 people. And so it still continues to happen. But Owens, Illinois does something really, really good for us. They have this logo that was up until the mid-1950s that looks like Yoda. It's an oval. Let's see if I have a picture of it. I can't remember if I have a picture. There we go. There's my bottle I'm holding. It looks like Yoda. That was their logo up until, from the 30s up until about 1955, 1956. And Duraglass, you can see the bottom, that Duraglass. So to this side, this is the plant code on the left. This is the date code on the right. They started in, they merged and have this name since 1929. And they started out in 1930 with a 0. 0, a 1, a 2. So if you find a single date there, a single letter, number, not a letter, single number, that was from the 1930s. So in the when they hit 1940, they ran into a problem. Oh, zeros already been used. 0 dot, 1 dot. They started doing 2-digit date codes sometime around during the war. And there was a transition because we had a lot going on in this country. So they went and transitioned into 2-digit date codes. So if you find something, you can see the plant. Again, normally it's 20 or 23, and then the date. And then you can date your piece of sea glass if it's still there. The little logo on that one. Duraglass. That's their bottle making. So the glass is called Duraglass because it was a patented glass formula, and they added stuff to make the glass really super strong, and that's why you find bigger pieces of this emerald green, because it was made to be stronger bottles, so the sea glass retains that strength even after decades of tumbling. So since the mid-1950s, they changed, and they've got it changed again now that they have the eye and the oval. So you find eye and the oval, it's 1956 up until sometime in the 2000s when they changed it again. And then here, these are just some other ones we find. I did a whole presentation on bottle marks in Santa Barbara earlier this year, so I won't bore you, but these are things we find in Latch, Thatcher, Latchford. Aha! This is my prize. This one I found in Tunitas Creek. They're redoing Tunitas Creek, and it's going to be quite lovely. When I found this, you had to use a rope swing to get to the beach, and it was about like a 12-foot thing. But this is the oldest bottle mark that I've ever found. This was probably made in San Francisco, and it's the bottle maker actually drew that in. So it's an unknown bottle maker. Nobody knows who this person was. It's could be 1870s, 80s, I mean, as the time progressed, they would have not let the individual bottle maker, they stamped it with Pacific Glass Works. So this to me is a really precious piece, and it was broken, and it's been broken when I found it for a while, but it's that bottom. And it's so uneven, so this was blown into a mold. Bonfire glass, sometimes you find a piece of sea glass and it looks like you hold it up to the light, what's all the gunk inside of it? It was burnt. Could it have been actually like a beach party? Maybe. Could it have been that because we burned our trash, they had a lot of trash and the guy in the house just burned it? Yeah, there's a site location, Roosevelt Beach, that was coming out that is a burn location. Maybe they cooked there, or maybe I think they burnt glass too, because I found residue of glass. So you'll find it, and it's commonly called bonfire glass. Safety glass. Safety glass has wires that run through it, and it was actually used maybe like school windows, safety, privacy. I think it could have been associated somewhat with some of the military, but I can't prove that. It's definitely a school, but if you find a glass like that that's got the wires running through it, you can see that. That's called safety glass, and if you find it, you have to do the safety dance. All right, location. So this is key. You want to go sea glass hunting. Now, anywhere up and down our beaches, our tides, and I know this from a maritime person I spoke to, she's written numerous books, pull 15 miles in either direction. So I have found pieces of a ship that wrecked, like part of the mast, the rigging, that was clad in iron, and I got it off the beach because it looked like it would shred somebody's foot. But inside of it was a hemp rope. And there's 2 shipwrecks, one was on Arletta Park in 1898, the New York, and also the city of Venice. So what we know is it pulls things up and down. There was also off of Poplar, a dump site, and I've talked to older people and said, oh, we used to play there as kids in the dump site. Now it's a parking lot. And so that tide, I'm going to tell you, pulls south. Smithfield is where you might find things. And they could be like mid-century. You can write that down. But that's okay. That's okay. It's all good. There's plenty of glass in the sea, by the way. I'm going to get tripped out if people are there. So World War II officer's button. This was found in the sand at the site of Fort Miramar. And we didn't know it at the time. Yeah, yeah. So we thought maybe like somebody's walking the beach that got a vintage coat. It probably dated to that occupation where we had the military there. So it's not all about the pretty glass, sometimes it's about the artifacts. And I think we are at our terminus. Oh my gosh, you guys have been lovely. Come on. And then 1, 2, 3, sea glass! Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. That was a lot of fun. A lot of very informational.
Thank you.
A lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming out. Anybody have questions?
I have a comment.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Joe. Joe mentioned her article on identifying bottles, identifying glass. It's on the Halfway Bay History website. It's what?
Oh, here. Try that.
Oh, okay. So, Joe's, is that working? Hold on, I'm going to turn it on. I can yell. So it's on the, it's halfwaybayhistory.org. We have a QR code out on the table here that you can take a shot of that. It'll take you to our website. And Joe's article is there, front and center, and plus another one I think you did. So.
I've written a total of 8 articles, one in Beachcombing magazine, and then this is my second chance to speak. I did a a talk on the history of Miramar a couple years ago, I think. It was
Yes,
2023.
yes, and that's there, all of your video is there from the Miramar presentation, it's all there. So, you should check it out.
Hi, I'm Joe Fry. Tonight's talk, it's December 9th, 2025, was on sea glass and history by the Half Moon Bay History Association. Brown glass. Brown glass could be 19th century. This is a piece of a blob top, or into modern glasses. Beer bottles are still made in brown glass. This one is a 1940s Armstrong Glass Corporation piece, and it's got a beautiful amber color. Cobalt blue glass is everybody's favorite color, mostly made by Maryland Glass Corporation in Baltimore, Maryland. Think Vicks Vapor Rub and Phillips Milk of Magnesia and Noxema jars. Greens. There are so many different colors of greens that we find in sea glass. This deep emerald green was made by Owens, Illinois Glass Company. It was Duraglass that you find, bigger pieces. That was a 1940s, 50s type of a glass that they manufactured. You also find lime greens and olive greens and these beautiful soft greens that could have come from glass insulators. Uranium glass. It glows. If you've got a UV reactive light, you're going to get that glow. And yes, it does really have uranium in it. Its heyday was the 1880s, but it was made up until about World War II. White glass. This is our #1 color that you find. 26 to 27% of all glass is white. It is usually machine made, and usually 20th century to get that beautiful, nice frosting on it. When you find them with the metal in it, it could be safety glass, a piece of safety glass window. Gray. Gray could be early 20th century up until more modern TV screens we sometimes find sea glass. Pale blue and sea foam generally are 19th century colors. I'm going to take the Coke bottle out of that mix because this was a patented color that Coke manufactured up until the 1960s. But these colors got their beautiful sheen from the sand that the glass was made out of. Black glass, also known as pirate glass, or what I like to call saloon glass. It is dark in color. If you shine a light through it, it can even be green or brown. It was made this color to keep the contents from getting spoiled. Lavender, dark purple. This had manganese in the glass. Over time, it solarizes, so when the sun hits it over years, it can turn purple. Dark purple is our rarest single color that we find. Milk glass. This actually had bone in it to give it its milky color. It also could be pale blue, azurite, or pale green, jadeite. These are popular dish sets mid-century that are still collectible today. Milk glass was formed into many different shapes. This is a light bulb made in Germany in the 1920s, but also it formed the top of canning jars or mason jars. The lids had lined pieces. Thank you.